Welcome to Hockey Wiz Talks podcast. Today I'll be breaking down and predicting NHL playoff matchups. Eastern Conference preview. The first matchup in the Eastern Conference is between the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Montreal Canadiens. Key players in this matchup for Pittsburgh: Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Jake Guentzel, Jason Zucker, Patrick Hornqvist, Brian Rust, Chris Letang, Justin Schultz, John Marino, and Brian DeMullen. For Montreal, Thomas Tatar, Brendan Gallagher, Max Domi, Jonathan Drouin, Philip Deneau, Nick Suzuki, Jeff Petrie, Ben Sherratt, Alexander Romanov, and Shea Weber if healthy. The goaltender matchup is Matt Murray and Tristan Jarry for Pittsburgh going up against Carey Price for Montreal. On paper, the Pittsburgh Penguins blow the Montreal Canadiens out of the water, but there is one equalizer in all of this: Carey Price. Carey Price is acclaimed as the best goalie in the world and could single-handedly win the series. Montreal is a very well-coached team. They are also a very well-structured team and have a good mix of youth and veteran players. The wild card in this matchup is Shea Weber, because if he is healthy and is able to play, it will make this matchup a much tougher series for the Penguins. Carey Price will need to be at the top of his game and stand on his head against the Penguins if the Canadiens want to have a chance to win this series. Beyond the players in the top 6, the Canadiens don't get much secondary scoring. That needs to change if the Canadiens want to compete with the Penguins. On the other side of this matchup, the Pittsburgh Penguins are led by Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin, who have the pressure to win now. Pittsburgh added Jason Zucker at the deadline, and Jake Guentzel should be ready to play when play resumes. The Penguins should be fine offensively, but they have major issues on defense, which Montreal could exploit with their team speed. Besides Chris Letang and Brian DeMullen, the rest of the defense don't make a huge impact on the game and are defensive liabilities. Overall, I think the matchup favors the Pittsburgh Penguins because they have more high-end players. My prediction is that the Pittsburgh Penguins win the series 3-0. The next matchup in the Eastern Conference is between the Carolina Hurricanes and the New York Rangers. Key players in this matchup for Carolina: Sebastian Aho, Andrei Svechnikov, Toivo Teravainen, Nino Niederreiter, Vincent Trocheck, Jordan Staal, Dougie Hamilton, Jacob Slavin, Jake Gardiner, Brady Shea, and Sami Vatanen. For the New York Rangers, Artemi Panarin, Mika Zibanejad, Chris Kreider, Ryan Strome, Pavel Buchnevich, Filip Chytil, Kaapo Kakko, Adam Fox, Jacob Trouba, and Tony DeAngelo. The goaltending matchup in this series is Peter Mrazek for Carolina going up against Igor Shesterkin and Henrik Lundqvist for the New York Rangers. The Carolina Hurricanes are stacked and have a really deep team both offensively and defensively. The Hurricanes' top 6 falls under the radar, but they really do have a tremendous top 6 with Sebastian Aho, Andrei Svechnikov, Toivo Teravainen, Nino Niederreiter, Jordan Staal, and Vincent Trocheck. Despite being without Brett Pesce, they still have a tremendous D-core anchored by Dougie Hamilton and Jacob Slavin. Goaltending is the only question mark with the Hurricanes, but it could be fixed by playing tremendous defense. Rod Brind'Amour is developing into one of the best coaches in the league. The Hurricanes will be a tough out for any team. The New York Rangers are led offensively by Artemi Panarin, Mika Zibanejad, and Chris Kreider. They also have a good supporting cast of Ryan Strome, Pavel Buchnevich, Filip Chytil, and Kaapo Kakko. Adam Fox, Jacob Trouba, and Tony DeAngelo are 3 very good defensemen that can jump into the attack and contribute offensively. Igor Shesterkin was a stud coming on in the second half of the season. He should get the nod to begin with, but if he falters, they have Henrik Lundqvist as a backup, which is a great insurance plan. Because the Carolina Hurricanes play a better team game, I am going to pick them to advance to the next round over the New York Rangers. My prediction for this series is that the Carolina Hurricanes win 4-1. And now a word from our sponsor. Check out my hockey blog at hockeywiztalkshockey.blogspot.com. The next matchup in the Eastern Conference is between the New York Islanders and the Florida Panthers. Key players for the New York Islanders: Matt Barzal, Brock Nelson, Anders Lee, Jordan Eberle, Josh Bailey, J.G. Pajot, Anthony Beauvillier, Ryan Pulock, Nick Leddy, Devon Taves, and Adam Pelech. Key players for the Florida Panthers: Alexander Barkov, Jonathan Huberdeau, Evgeny Dadonov, Mike Hoffman, Eric Holla, Brett Connolly, Aaron Ekblad, Keith Yandel, and Michael Matheson. The goaltending matchup in this series is Semyon Varlamov for the New York Islanders going up against Sergei Bobrovsky for the Florida Panthers. The New York Islanders have almost the exact same core that made it to the second round of the playoffs last year before being dispatched by the Carolina Hurricanes. Gone from last year's team are Valtteri Filppula and Robin Lehner. Replacing them are Derek Brassard and Semyon Varlamov. At the trade deadline this year, the Islanders acquired J.G. Pajot and Andy Green to get more veteran experience for a deep playoff run. Barry Trotz has turned the Islanders into a very hard team to play against, so Florida will be facing a tall task. If the Florida Panthers want to win this series, Sergei Bobrovsky will need to bounce back and find his Vezina caliber form. The Panthers are really dependent on one line to score, so if that line is shut down, there won't be much scoring. Going up against a team like the Islanders that play tight checking and sound defense, the Panthers will need some of their role players to step up. Defensemen such as Aaron Ekblad and Keith Yandel will need to be careful jumping up in the play because the Islanders have a tremendous counterattack. The New York Islanders are a better overall team than the Florida Panthers. For that reason, I picked them to advance to the next round. My prediction is that the New York Islanders win 4-1. Fourth and final matchup in the Eastern Conference is between the Toronto Maple Leafs and Columbus Blue Jackets. Key players for the Toronto Maple Leafs: Austin Matthews, John Tavares, Mitch Marner, William Nylander, Alex Kerfoot, Kasperi Kapanen, Ilya Mikheyev, Morgan Rielly, Tyson Barrie, Jake Gardiner, and Travis Dermott. For the Columbus Blue Jackets: Pierre-Luc Dubois, Cam Atkinson, Gustav Nyquist, Oliver Borgstrand, Nick Foligno, Boone Jenner, Alexander Texier, Zach Werenski, Seth Jones, and David Savard. The goaltending matchup in this series is Frederik Andersen for Toronto going up against Elvis Merzlikins for the Columbus Blue Jackets. The Toronto Maple Leafs look like they are a better team on paper, but the Blue Jackets are the same team that swept last year's President's Trophy winner Tampa Bay Lightning. The Columbus Blue Jackets are a well-coached team that play a rough, in-your-face style of hockey. They also play a very agitating style of play. The Blue Jackets are built from the net out. They have a very good goalie in Elvis Merzlikins and a tremendous decor as well, which features Seth Jones, Zach Werenski, and David Savard. While the Blue Jackets don't have any superstar forwards, they do have a bunch of very solid forwards that know their role and fit the team well. The Toronto Maple Leafs, on the other hand, have the star power. However, their issue is that they don't play together as a team. Sometimes, having too much star power in the lineup is a curse because they tend to go for the perfect play, which rarely happens come playoff time. The Leafs have struggled playing against tight checking teams because they clog the neutral zone, and it will be tough to carry the puck through a neutral zone trap. Last year in the playoffs, top players for the Leafs actually played well, but they did not get any secondary scoring. If they want to make it further in the playoffs this year, they will need players such as Kasperi Kapanen, Zach Hyman, Ilya Mikheyev, and Alex Kerfoot to chip in as well. I think this will be a hard-fought series, with the Toronto Maple Leafs edging out the Columbus Blue Jackets 3-2. And now, a word from our sponsor. Visit my Facebook page, Mr. HockeyWiz777, and my Instagram, Mr. HockeyWiz77. Western Conference Preview. The first matchup in the Western Conference is between the Edmonton Oilers and the Chicago Blackhawks. Key players in this series for Edmonton: Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Andreas Athanasiou, James Neal, Kyler Yamamoto, Oscar Klefbom, Darnell Nurse, Adam Larson, and Ethan Bear. Key players for the Chicago Blackhawks: Patrick Kane, Jonathan Toews, Dylan Strome, Alex DeBrincat, Brandon Saad, Dominic Kubalik, Kirby Dach, Alex Nylander, Duncan Keith, Oli Mata, Adam Boqvist, and Connor Murphy. The goaltending matchup in this series is Mike Smith for Edmonton going up against Corey Crawford for Chicago. This is the most interesting matchup in this round of the playoffs because it puts two of the best dynamic duos in the league up against each other. Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane were at the center of Chicago's dynasty from 2010 to 2015 and continue to be two of the best players in the league. Besides Toews and Kane, the Blackhawks have some nice supporting pieces like Alex DeBrincat, Dylan Strome, Brandon Saad, and Dominic Kubalik. Duncan Keith and Oli Mata are the only two defensemen with playoff experience under their belt, especially with Calvin DeHaan and Brent Seabrook out. Corey Crawford is a veteran goalie with plenty of playoff experience. However, his defense in front of him is not very good. This is very troubling for the Blackhawks, especially because they are facing the best dynamic duo in the league in Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. The Edmonton Oilers are led by Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, two of the best players in the game today. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, James Neal, and Kyler Yamamoto provide great secondary scoring for the Oilers, which is very important in the playoffs. The Oilers also have some nice pieces on defense. However, they are missing that star defenseman that can take over the game. Mike Smith is likely going to be the starter for the Oilers. He'll have to be at his best if the Oilers want to win the series. I expect the series to be high scoring, with the Edmonton Oilers edging out the Chicago Blackhawks. My prediction is that the Edmonton Oilers win this series 3-2. The next matchup in the Western Conference is between the Nashville Predators and the Arizona Coyotes. Key players for the Nashville Predators: Ryan Johansson, Matt Duchene, Philip Forsberg, Victor Arvidsson, Mikael Granlund, Craig Smith, Kyle Turris, Roman Josi, Ryan Ellis, Matthias Ekholm. Key players for the Arizona Coyotes: Taylor Hall, Phil Kessel, Clayton Keller, Derek Stefan, Nick Schmaltz, Christian Dvorak, Connor Garland, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Jacob Chichurin, Alex Goligoski, and Nicholas Jarmelson. The goaltending matchup in this series is UC Saros and Pekka Rinne for Nashville, going up against Darcy Kemper for the Arizona Coyotes. The Nashville Predators are a deep and talented team that has plenty of playoff experience. Offensively, the Predators are led by Ryan Johansson, Matt Duchene, Philip Forsberg, Victor Arvidsson, and Mikael Granlund. These players will need to simplify things and worry about doing the little things that win hockey games, like playing defense and winning puck battles. Nashville also has 3 all-world defensemen in Roman Josi, Ryan Ellis, and Matthias Ekholm, as well as a very talented young defenseman in Dante Fabro. The Nashville Predators use their defense very well, and their defense are one of the best in the league at jumping into the play to create odd man situations. The Preds face a dilemma in net because UC Saros is having a better season than Pekka Rinne, but he doesn't have the playoff experience. Personally, I think the Predators should roll the dice and go with Saros, but should he falter, they could always fall back on a veteran goalie like Pekka Rinne. The Arizona Coyotes have some very talented wingers in Taylor Hall, Phil Kessel, and Clayton Keller, but they are missing a star center. Derek Stefan, Nick Schmaltz, Christian Dvorak, and Carl Soderberg are all capable centers, but none of these are stars. Coyotes also have a great defensive core with OEL, Alex Goligoski, and Jacob Chichurin. Under head coach Rick Tocchet, the Coyotes play stingy defense and are not an easy team to play against by any means. Darcy Kemper has really turned his career around in Arizona and has been amongst the league leaders in GAA and save percentage in the past 2 seasons. If the Coyotes want to win this series, they will need their best players like Taylor Hall, Phil Kessel, and Clayton Keller to play like stars. If they don't, they won't win this series. This will be a tough, hard-fought series, but I think Nashville's playoff experience gives them a slight edge over Arizona. My prediction is that the Nashville Predators win 3-2. And now, a word from our sponsor. Check out my other podcasts on SoundCloud.com/MrHockeyWiz777. The third matchup in the Western Conference is between the Vancouver Canucks and Minnesota Wild. Key players for the Vancouver Canucks: Elias Pettersson, Brock Besser, Bo Horvat, JT Miller, Tyler Toffoli, Tanner Pearson, Quinton Hughes, Alex Edler, Tyler Myers, and Chris Tanev. Key players for the Minnesota Wild: Eric Stahl, Kevin Fiala, Zach Parise, Matt Zuccarello, Alex Galchenyuk, Luke Kunin, Mikko Koivu, Ryan Suter, Matt Dumba, Jared Spurgeon, and Jonas Brodin. The goaltending matchup in this series is Jacob Markstrom for Vancouver, going up against Devan Dubnyk for Minnesota. The Vancouver Canucks are a rising young team with very little playoff experience, but their skills should make this an interesting matchup. Vancouver is led offensively by Elias Pettersson, Brock Besser, Bo Horvat, and JT Miller, as well as 2 very good snipers in Tyler Toffoli and Tanner Pearson. Quinn Hughes, who is a front-runner for the Rookie of the Year, is going to play a key role in this series, as are Alex Edler and Tyler Myers. However, I think the real key to this series is going to be Chris Tanev, who is one of the more reliable defensive defensemen in the lineup. Jacob Markstrom is a solid goalie in the regular season, but he doesn't have any playoff experience, so it's going to be interesting to see how he does in the playoffs. The Minnesota Wild, on the other hand, have many veteran players in their lineup and have tons of playoff experience. However, their core players such as Zach Parise, Ryan Suter, Eric Stahl, Matt Zuccarello, and Mikko Koivu are all on the decline. Luckily for Minnesota, they also have some decent young players in their lineup like Luke Kunin, Jordan Greenway, Ryan Donato, and Joel Eriksson Ek. The Wild have a good defensive core with Ryan Suter, Matt Dumba, Jared Spurgeon, and Jonas Brodin. However, it isn't anything special. Although the Wild started to go with Alex Stalock down the stretch of this season, I expect Devan Dubnyk to get the start in Game 1. If he struggles, I would not be surprised if the Wild do indeed turn to Alex Stalock for the remainder of the series. The Vancouver Canucks are an up-and-coming team, while the Minnesota Wild are a veteran team with playoff experience, but have a declining core. In this situation, I will go with the up-and-coming team in the Vancouver Canucks, who have the potential to be contenders in the next few years. My prediction is that the Vancouver Canucks win the series 3-2. The fourth and final matchup in the Western Conference is between the Calgary Flames and Winnipeg Jets. Key players for the Calgary Flames: Johnny Gaudreau, Sean Monahan, Matthew Tkachuk, Elias Lindholm, Mikael Backlund, Mark Giordano, TJ Brody, Noah Hannafin, and Travis Hamonic. Key players for the Winnipeg Jets: Blake Wheeler, Mark Scheifele, Kyle Connor, Patrick Laine, Nikolai Ehlers, Josh Morrissey, and Neil Pionk. The goalie matchup is David Rittich for Calgary going up against Connor Hellebuyck for Winnipeg. The Calgary Flames have been notorious for losing early in the first round, and this year might not be any different, because the Winnipeg Jets are a tough first round matchup for any team. Calgary is a great regular season team, but come playoff time, they aren't as good because they are on the smaller side. Johnny Gaudreau has been disappointing in past postseasons, as he has pretty much been invisible. His line mate Sean Monahan has been by far the Calgary Flames' best player in the playoffs, but he can't do it all on his own. He will need help from players such as Matthew Tkachuk, Mikael Backlund, and some other role players. Calgary has a nice defensive core. Unfortunately, their best defenseman, Mark Giordano, is 35 and has never risen to the occasion in the playoffs. David Rittich is likely going to be the starter for the Calgary Flames. He needs to be great for his team to win the series. The Winnipeg Jets have a deadly top six that features one of the best dynamic duos in the league in Blake Wheeler and Mark Scheifele, as well as three very young but skilled wingers in Patrick Laine, Kyle Connor, and Nikolai Ehlers. Winnipeg also has some nice supporting players such as Matthew Perreault and Jack Roslovic, who can chip in offensively occasionally. Defensively, the Winnipeg Jets are a huge question mark. This is their first postseason playing without Dustin Byfuglien, but they do have two very good defensemen in Neil Pionk and Josh Morrissey that are capable of putting up points. The glue and key to the Winnipeg Jets is Connor Hellebuyck, who is capable of winning games single-handedly. The Winnipeg Jets need some of their core players to step up. Players such as Patrick Laine and Nikolai Ehlers will need to take their game to the next level. If they don't, it will be hard for them to advance. On paper, the Calgary Flames look like a better team, but the Winnipeg Jets have a better goalie and have shown the ability to win playoff games. So for that reason, I give them an edge in this series. My prediction is that the Winnipeg Jets win 3-2. On my next podcast, I'll be talking about what is wrong with the Anaheim Ducks.